My golden child brother got himself arrested during my wedding, and then later out of anger revealed a dark family secret that almost destroyed my life. A few weeks before my wedding, my brother asked me if he could propose during reception, but when I said no, he got our parents to show up at my door to yell at me. My mother went insane when I kept saying no and threatened to destroy my fiancé's dress, but I told her I would press charges if she did this. She started crying and asked if I would really do that to her, and when I said yes, she stopped crying and went back to screaming. They only left when I threatened to uninvite my brother, who actually promised he wouldn't propose at my wedding. But when my wedding came around, his girlfriend showed up in white, and as a cherry on top, as we were about to cut the cake, I heard my brother's girlfriend screaming, "Yes!" I turned around to see him proposing to her. He put the ring on her finger, but as soon as he did, the maid of honor spilled red wine all over them. Immediately afterwards, everything spiraled out of control. My brother was convinced we had planned the spill, thinking we wanted to embarrass him and his girlfriend. He was furious and caused a scene in front of all the guests. My wife, Amanda, and I felt the eyes of everyone on us. It was clear my brother couldn't let it go. He approached the maid of honor, who was already really embarrassed and trying to clean up the mess. Even though she tried to say sorry and explain it was an accident, it wasn't. My brother kept saying she did it on purpose. He began yelling and cursing at her. Then she began to cry. This caused even more people to get involved, trying to calm things down. I jumped in trying to cool things off, but it just made him louder and more upset. Out of nowhere, he stepped right up to me and shoved me. I was totally caught off guard and stumbled back. I pushed back, and things got out of hand fast. We ended up scuffling, grabbing at each other's shirts, and before we knew it, we were swinging at each other. Then Amanda decided to call the police. When the police showed up, they talked to a bunch of people to figure out what happened. It was really embarrassing to explain the whole fight, especially in front of all our friends and family who were there to celebrate with us. In the end, the police decided it was best for my brother and his girlfriend to leave the party. As they were being led away, my brother kept yelling about how that war of a bridesmaid ruined their day. Even though it was a relief to see him go, I also felt sad because he's still my brother. After they left, the whole mood at the wedding was pretty down. A lot of guests started to leave too, saying sorry as they went. The morning after the wedding, my phone buzzing non-stop woke me up. It was my parents calling from their vacation in Italy. They had missed the wedding for their holiday, but my brother had already called them and told them his side of the story about what happened. From what they were saying, it was obvious my parents were on my brother's side. He's always gotten his way since he was the younger brother and baby of the family. They seemed disappointed in me and expected me to fix things. The whole conversation felt pretty one-sided, mainly because they had only heard my brother's version of the story. This kind of thing isn't new. In our family, it's always been like his word gets more weight than mine. Not only that, my parents told me I had to bail out my brother, who had ended up spending the night in jail because once he was outside, he started arguing with the officers and acted like an eye hole to them. They also said I needed to replace his girlfriend's dress that got wine-stained during the wedding, which turned out to be the dress she was planning to wear at their own future wedding. We ended up in an argument and I brought up every time they were in his favor, but they didn't see my point of view. I told them how they'd always favored my brother since we were kids. Every Christmas, it was obvious he was the favorite because he got most of the gifts while I got less. Whenever he messed up, I was blamed, since I was the older brother and supposed to set the example. This pattern continued into our teen years. I always had to include him in everything I did, which made it feel like I couldn't have my own life. He was always there. In that conversation, I realized I couldn't do this anymore, and I told them to keep me out of the current mess with my brother. I said they can go F off if they expected me to bail out my brother after he ruined my wedding. The other end on the line fell silent. They said they were coming back to the US that instant and hung up. They came back from their trip that day and immediately bailed out my brother themselves. I found myself in the kitchen, getting breakfast ready for Amanda. I was still thinking about the call with my parents, but I pushed it aside to focus on making this morning special for her. When I walked into the bedroom with the tray, I saw Amanda sitting up with puffy eyes from crying the night before. I set the tray down and joined her on the bed, telling her about the call with my parents. She listened. I could see she was still hurt from our ruined wedding night. I told her that we wouldn't let them ruin today too. I placed the tray on her lap, showing her favorite breakfast: pancakes, strawberries, and whipped cream. Her eyes lit up, and she smiled at me. As she started eating, I told her exactly what I knew would cheer her up: a shopping trip to her favorite stores. Amanda shook her head and said she'd love that. She was eyeing a new pair of shoes since the last time we left the mall, and I was going to get them for her. We spent the morning enjoying breakfast in bed. Later, we went out to Amanda's favorite shops. While Amanda was in the dressing room, I got a call from my brother. He was clearly drunk and started bragging. He told me our parents promised him a lot of money and valuable family property, making sure he'd get the family inheritance, not me. I asked him what he was talking about, and he said that the reason why I was jealous of him was because our parents would make sure he was set for life, and nothing that I could do would change that. He told me about hundreds of thousands of dollars in the trust that Dad made for us, but it only had his name on it and the will. He said he saw Dad's will and that they wouldn't be leaving me a dime. The call ended suddenly, and just as I was about to call back, Amanda came out of the dressing room. She asked if the dress made her look fat. I looked at her and saw how beautiful she looked, the dress fitting her perfectly. I smiled at her and I told her she looked stunning. I asked her, did she want that one, and was she ready to go? I really wanted to go home at this point. She said we could get out of there, and we did. did. As we were driving home, Amanda seemed happier, and this made me content. When we pulled into the driveway, my heart sank. My brother, his fiancée, and our parents were all there. The tension was heavy as Amanda and I stepped out of the car. Immediately, they started demanding. My parents insisted again that we buy a new dress for my brother's fiancée and compensate her for the emotional damage from the wedding incident. I said, if anything, they need to pay us for emotional damage. Amanda explained to my parents that my brother's fiancée wore white at our wedding, and my brother made things worse by proposing to her, but they didn't seem to care. My brother's fiancée took this personally and began insulting Amanda. She called her a pass-around and said she was jealous because she looked better in her dress at her wedding. She then accused Amanda of getting someone to spill the wine on her because of her jealousy. Amanda admitted that she had orchestrated the wine spill. That admission was like pouring gasoline on a fire. My brother's fiancée screamed and lunged at her. The driveway turned chaotic as she tried to attack my wife. Instinctively, I stepped between them, pushing her back to protect her. Things quickly turned into another fight, with my brother jumping in, swinging his fists. My dad threatened to call the police on us again, but that didn't stop us. Eventually, the police arrived and arrested me and my brother. They placed us both in the back of a cop car and took us to the police station. On the ride there, my brother laughed to himself. I asked him what was funny since we were going to jail. He asked, did I want to know the real reason why mom and dad didn't like me? I didn't know what to say after that, so I remained silent. He went on to say, I wasn't their real child. My father had an affair, and I was the result. My real mom didn't want me, so my parents were stuck having to raise me. He called me a mistake and said that's why I would never get any inheritance. I said he was drunk and that he was just saying this. He asked me why I think I had dark eyes when everyone in our family had blue or green eyes. I still didn't pay any attention to him. He said that grandma tried to convince mom and dad to put me in the system. She said someone would take me, but it was too late. I asked him how long did he know, and he said he's always known. They told him at a very young age. I didn't know if this was just another one of his ploys to hurt me, or if this was true. Whichever was the case, this news hit me hard. The cold treatment, the favoritism, the lack of inheritance, it all made sense now. They had never truly seen me as their own child. As soon as we arrived at the police station, Amanda was there. She bailed me out and she signed some paperwork. My brother was still in his cell as I was leaving. He was screaming, telling Amanda to get him out of there. She said to ask that fiancé of his, and we left. The ride home was quiet, with only the car engine's hum filling the silence. Finally, I told Amanda what my brother had drunkenly confessed, that I was the result of an affair and raised by parents who never really considered me their own. I could see she was trying to process everything I had shared. I told her I was unsure about confronting my parents. How could I ask them, knowing they had kept such a deep secret? What would it change? These questions made me feel even more lost. Amanda reached over and held my hand. She told me she would support whatever choice I thought was right. As we pulled into our driveway, I felt a weight on my shoulders, but I knew whatever happened, I had Amanda standing with me, and knowing that I felt more hopeful for our future. Update 1. 3 years later, life has taken a brighter turn. One autumn morning, Amanda came to me with a glowing smile, holding up a positive pregnancy test. I hugged her and kissed her. I was so excited to be a father. As Amanda's pregnancy progressed, we decided to renew our vows and make new, happy wedding memories. We planned a simple, intimate ceremony with close friends. The day of our vow renewal was perfect. The sun shone brightly over the beautiful garden where we stood. Amanda, radiant with her baby bump, walked down the aisle in a flowing dress. Her beauty took my breath away. A few months after our vow renewal, I felt my world turn upside down again. My parents died unexpectedly in a car accident. Even though we had a strained relationship, I felt a deep sadness and a sense of obligation to attend their funeral. Amanda joined me in support. At the funeral, the air felt heavy. Friends and extended family gathered to pay their respects. My brother, however, stood apart from the people mourning. He looked almost satisfied that our parents were gone. He avoided looking in my direction, his demeanor unsettlingly detached. As the service proceeded, I couldn't shake the unease. My brother's behavior seemed out of place. I couldn't fathom his emotions, whether he was relieved, indifferent, or hiding something deeper, but his presence felt like a dark cloud over an already grim day. As the service ended, I watched my brother, still keeping his distance, a faint, almost smug smile playing on his lips. After the funeral, life seemed to settle into an uneasy calm. My brother and his fiancée continued to live in their lavish mansions, seemingly untouched by the aftermath of our parents' passing. News occasionally trickled through the family grapevine about their extravagant lifestyle, but it wasn't until later that I heard troubling rumors. Word spread that they had burned through their inheritance quicker than expected. Their once larger-than-life habits were now crumbling under the weight of poor financial decisions. It came as a surprise to no one when whispers began circulating that they were now calling around to get money from family members. I received a hesitant call from a cousin one evening, sharing the news. It was unsettling to hear how quickly their money went away. The next few months, I focused on Amanda and preparing for the baby. Their inheritance would have helped a lot. I didn't know how expensive babies were until I had to prepare for one. Nesting became our shared project, painting the nursery, assembling cribs and changing tables, and picking out tiny onesies and soft blankets. While we prepared for the baby, one day, out of the blue, my brother called. wanting to reconnect. His voice almost sounded sincere, and it caught me off guard. He said he regretted everything he had done to us and had left his fiancée. He said he wanted to mend the relationship with his brother. I listened. With a heavy heart, I quietly blocked his number. In the quiet of our home, Amanda and I chose peace. We knew that our family, built on love, was all we needed.